Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Today we have a very special guest, especially in these times where these things must be considered, where they must be addressed. Ted Griffith is a 40-year communications and public affairs professional who has helped senior executives in business, government, politics, media, and nonprofits to deliver persuasive messages. As president of the Fixers Group, his team has managed issues in such sectors as energy, water and wastewater, healthcare, municipal and provincial governments, agriculture, finance, mining, and retail. There's not a place he hasn't touched. The firm is committed to bringing the art and science of persuasion to the clients in communication. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Ted, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Alberto. Thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity.
Actually, look, I must confess that I didn't get through the entire of your book, but I went through some of the synopsis, and It is a topic that we cover here at Politics Done Right, day in and day out. And having a book of this nature that itemizes as it does, I think it is an excellent thing. So let's go ahead and start with your entry. Why did you write the book?
Well, I'd say it was pulling
beforehand. Yeah. I want to let folks know, and I'm sorry about this. Mm-hmm. The title of the book that Ted wrote is "Arc of Theater of Lies." Correct?
Theater of Lies.
Theater of Lies.
We live in a theater of lies.
And Isn't that true?
You know, as I was doing the research on this book, because as a communicator, I was over the years just frustrated about how people were making decisions based on lies and information, and letting their opinions be based on lies and information. And this is the book I've always wanted to write. I've written a lot over many years, but I just wanted to spend some time and go, and certainly, the COVID pandemic informed part of this is that, people were deciding not to get vaccinated and saying there's, too much personal input in their lives. But this was causing people to die. And so people were making decisions based on lies and misinformation that are actually affecting their health. And I found lots more evidence of that in the process of writing the book. And so I gave it the title Theater of Lies because what I found is that the producers of lies and misinformation use the same tools that producers in Hollywood, television, and theater use. There's a villain. There's a problem that has to be solved. There's barriers to overcome. And the stakes keep rising and rising and rising until nobody else but me or others can fix it. And those are the things that get into our, we're used to those stories and believing them. We go into a theater, we suspend disbelief, we enjoy the show. But it's being all around us now in how people are communicating with us, and they're using those tools to manipulate us.
Now, let me first, let's go ahead. You're in Toronto, Canada right now. Yep. And living here in the United States, I know we are pretty close to each other, and we get cross national news, etc. I watch Canadian broadcasting every so often, etc. But there is a certain cancer that has evolved here in the United States. I don't think you guys have ever seen it in Canada. Enlighten me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've seen it in most countries in the Western world.
Well, I would disagree with you there.
Thank you.
I think that America is certainly can be seen as the crucible of it right now, and maybe the most at stake. I mean, going into the 2024 election, democracy's at stake. I mean, as a Canadian growing up, and I was around American influences all my life. My father worked for an American corporation, American news coming across from Buffalo all the time. The thought that democracy is on the ballot in America in 2024 is astounding. But it has come into Canada. It has come into the UK. Look what happened in Brexit,
right?
Where it was the yes side and the no side there were passing lines back and forth to manipulate people. So no, it's not. I mean,
so in other words, you're telling me it's much more prevalent than I would see it. Living in this morass here in the United States, it just seems like it's all encompassing. From your research, I think you're telling me that no, you're seeing this, or you've seen this all over.
It's all over the world. Absolutely all over the world. I mean, and one of the problems is you get from the theater of lies to the rule of lies. Mm-hmm. And that's what you've got in China, and you've got in Russia and other areas where...
Explain the difference. I think that is a very good concept that you just gave there. The differences that you just poured, the theater of law, the rule of lies.
Well, we live in a theater of lies today. And that is that so much of what we see is a lie or misinformation, and is produced to manipulate us. But when you get into the rule of lies, that means if you challenge the lies, you go to jail. And that's what happens in China. That's what happens in Russia. In Russia, for example, with the Ukrainian invasion, the war in Ukraine, Putin passed a law that said you couldn't use the term war.
War. Yes, I remember that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In China, the first doctor that found COVID-19 was put in jail because he talked about it. That's what I call the rule of lies. Okay. So when literally you go from, okay, we're being influenced by lies, which is where we are now, to saying, no, this is the truth. This is what you say. And if you don't say that, you go to jail. That's the rule of lies.
Now, interestingly, like you said, you're looking in from Canada to the United States. And I think you just said, and I'm going to go back to the tenet of your book in a second, but I want to get this straight. You've seen this migration of this excessive amount of lies and misinformation starting to migrate across the border as well?
Absolutely. And it's on both sides of, use an American term, both sides of the aisle, liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats. There's either complete baffle gab. I mean, and George Orwell talked about this, 60 years ago with Politics in the English Language, how, political language is designed to manipulate because it says things that don't mean anything. I can say I'm fighting for democracy. Well, what does that mean? Because democracy means different things to different people. That's part of the problem with misinformation and lies. That sometimes it's just not a lie, but it's using words that mean one thing to me, mean another thing to you, but you think I mean what you want me to believe. That's part of the problem that we're dealing with, is that here we've got a sort of our opposition or prime minister in waiting, he may feel he is, calls Canada broken. Yet every poll, every survey, every study shows Canada among the 1, 2, 3, or 4th best country in the world.
Right.
Well, if we're broken, we're doing pretty well. Are there things wrong that needs to be fixed? Of course. But that's what lies and misinformation do. They take something and I call it, it's like, this is how hyperbole works, right? I say something's broken. I say things, and if they're broken, they're either broken or fixed. That's binary thinking. And that's what we get a lot of now, a lot more of. And we saw it in COVID-19. We had our own trucker convoy go across the country and surround our Parliament Hill for 3 weeks.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. That was worldwide news. Based on misinformation of COVID, based on misinformation of even how our political system works. They wanted our governor general to throw the prime minister out, which she actually has no power to do. No, there's no legislative power in the world like that. So for in Canada, so lots of lies and misinformation, and a lot of it comes down to, again, it's a signal that you're being lied to, or at very least manipulated, when somebody presents you with binary options. This is right, this is wrong. This is left, this is right. This is vaccines are bad, vaccines are good. Like we need to get into more of understanding and debate, and be able to debate on nuances, on in the gray area. And now I'll say it's on both sides of a call this left-right thinking binary, is on the left, if you bring something up, you get into cancel culture. Oh, you can't talk about that. So you get canceled. On the right, you get ostracized and beat up and doxxed, and all sorts of terrible things can happen if you dare to ask the question, to ask the question. It's like, I kind of feel like we live in a world where there's a matriarch or a patriarch sitting at the head of our family dinner table.
I think there is. I think there is. But before I get into that, because I want to explore these things with you.
Okay.
But before we get into that, I want to get some of the context of your writing.
Yes.
Because a lot of how the things that you're talking about, it sounds very American. And in following both Canadian and American news, I wonder about the let's say the symmetry. In other words, it is really, really bad here. The cancel culture, the ostracization, the doxing. I mean, it's very, very bad here. I haven't seen that at least reported in Canada. So I guess I'm asking if is your book, let's say, mostly for this major audience here in America, which I think suffers at this point in our history most of that problem?
Well, I go back to the fact that America doesn't suffer most of this problem. It is everywhere. I cite Canadian examples in the book. I cite American examples, British, Australian, Chinese, Russian, Japanese. There are this issue is around the world. Let's not forget that in 1944, Japanese people died for their emperor, because they believed he was a god.
Right. Correct. Yes.
So
that's how we got kamikazes and everything else. Right.
Okay. That's a belief in a lie.
Very true.
Right. Absolute. Where that cost millions of lives. Right. So it's not an American problem. I think Americans have gotten better at it. Mm-hmm. Like there's a line repeated in the book that simply says lies work. And when people think there's a conspiracy theory of people getting together and doing plans, they go, no, they just know that lies work. And in the business world, in marketing and communications, if something works, you repeat it. Why invent something new? Why, if lies are more effective than truth to get people to persuade to do what you want them to do?
Why is that?
Well, the key that I found is that I put lies and facts in the same bucket. I call them proof points, okay? Because they play on our biases. They play on what I call emotional resonance. So if the speaker, whether it's me or a presidential candidate or a business person is talking, and that what they're talking about resonates with you emotionally, the proof points you use, whether it's lies or misinformation or facts, that it simply confirms the decision you've already made. That's
there you go.
Key is that we don't use facts to inform us. We use facts and lies to confirm what we already believe.
Now, I want to postulate something. Have you ever heard of the Powell memo?
Yes. Is that the
it's a memorandum written in the 1960s by American justice I think he was the lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce here in America, and he eventually was ascended to the Supreme Court as a Supreme Court justice. But the idea behind this memo was that progressives were taking hold in America. People were getting smarter, wondering why the business world could have so much power based on what the average American citizen does. And the idea was that the schools, the institutions had to be infiltrated to make sure that we didn't turn against business in effect. So it was a pretty long letter that pretty much got implemented in the United States. The formation of the Heritage Foundation, the CAIR Institute, and a lot of these other think tanks that give plausibility to what I think you would justifiably call lies. And I guess what I'm saying, it seemed to have come from you asked why the lies, or I asked why the lies. It seemed to have always come from the corporate perspective. In other words, to use our intrinsic vulnerabilities and otherwise to make their points. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's It's true. I mean, in the business world, we simply call it market research. What are the points that are going to engage people? And my most simple example is if I am selling home alarm systems, I think I'm going to talk a lot about rising crime rates.
Exactly. I mean, you nailed it. You nailed it. Yeah.
So, and they're rising in your neighborhood, so if I'm living in Toronto and I'm trying to sell them in Toronto, I'm going to talk about Toronto statistics going up and, or things that look like Toronto that maybe aren't true. And so it's a long established pattern. There's no question. And I do say because it works. And it's not so bad if somebody's selling home security systems. It's not a bad thing to have a home security system. And if I get a little manipulated by thinking crime rates are rising, it's not a crime. Okay. But if I'm choosing my government, if I'm saying that, I'm not a racist, when in fact I do and say and have racist thoughts all the time, because if I'm, I mean, it was only in 1965 that Canada lost its last segregated school.
Oh, really?
Yes. Okay. Okay. We had segregated lunch counters in Halifax, which was the center of the Black population.
Right. I know.
In
Yeah.
Canada.
The migration. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so, as I say, we don't hold up our hands so well. Our fight today in Canada is the truth of Indigenous residential schools and the damage that they've done. People that have the children that died in them, and how many died, and what's true and what's not true. And they're literally, papers written on all sides of this argument. So we were still there, okay, based on the fact that race, which is also a lie. Okay, it's a human construct that we've created. Okay, that says, and that goes right back to the 1452 with an author who talked about how Africans were basically degenerates, right, and needed Christian help to save them. And so we enslaved them by making sure they were low on the totem pole, they needed our help, so we were doing them benefit, which you heard just last year from Ron DeSantis, that the slaves learned skills. Yes. 500 years later, same message.
It's amazing. You know what? It is amazing. You brought. I mean, I like the way you think, because I have this term now called antiseptic slavery. My term. Antiseptic slavery. I like that. Where I said we're all slaves now. It used to look like me, now it looks like all of us. We're all slaves to the corporate state, the corporations. And I give in a couple of my books, I give the examples why I use that term. Now, I think in you pointing out and tying DeSantis to a 500-year construct, it's powerful. And I think it's essential that we see these similarities, how it has migrated up the fault. And actually, a book like yours that distributes and exact how lies happens, I think it is what we need right now. So please,
thank you for that, because the book has 3 parts to it. And because it's called Theater of Lies, I called them acts: Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, like a 3-act play. And the first act was actually what I started with, which was simply the question: why do we believe lies, and why do we repeat them to others? Those 2 fundamentals. And I go back to, the book starts with the first chapter is, in the beginning there were lies. And let's talk about, Adam and Eve and the tree of knowledge. Don't eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And the serpent, the devil, saying, you should have that apple, Eve. Okay. If there was ever a clearer message that says, don't have knowledge, call something the tree of knowledge and say, don't eat from it. And then if you do, you're cast out.
Right.
That was the first, I would call it, there's many, many lies in the world beforehand, but that's the one that's written right in the Bible, sort of on page 1. After, in the beginning, then there is this: if you find knowledge, right? If you are curious,
right?
Remember the other cliche that's out there, which is actually a Shakespearean term: curiosity killed the cat.
Yes.
All these messages from the Bible to Shakespeare to others, which says, don't ask questions. That's dangerous. Okay. And it's the people in power or people trying to acquire power. Well, now I've gone past, don't ask questions. If you ask questions, you're gone. You're out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the fracture you're seeing in between the Republicans and Democrats in general in the United States, and the fracture you're seeing in the Republican Party between the MAGA Republicans and the so-called traditional Republicans is how dare can you question these things? But it's because, I even start with the fundamentals, which are, some people call them benign lies, but I call them they're teaching points.
Mm-hmm.
I just bring this up that we're all brought up with this fact that, the sun rises in the morning and it sets at night. Okay. You see it every day. It's on our phones. It's on the newscasts. Sun comes up now, sun comes down there. Yes. But that's not actually what happens.
Right. It's a rotation of the earth. Yeah.
Our position on the earth rotates away towards the sun and then away from it. Okay.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that we need to stop saying sunrise and sunset, but it's a teachable moment to say what you are seeing may not be true.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get this all the time. Well, I saw it for myself. I've been to Africa. I've seen, the slums in Africa, and they're poor and they're starving and they're ignorant. And, why would you want more of them here? I've seen it myself. Well, that's not necessarily true. Okay. Just because you've seen it doesn't make it true. Okay. So another thing that we do is we take a single point of data, even something that I've seen or something that I've read, and we use what I call silly putty logic. Mm-hmm. We take that and we stretch it all the way across. Remember that silly putty toys?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So we stretch it to fit a point. And part of that problem is where our traditional media comes in. And that is because what traditional media does is they don't talk data, they talk news. And news is something that's by definition rare.
Mm-hmm.
It's dog bites man is not news. Man bites dog is news. Okay?
Right.
Now, just because a man bites a dog doesn't mean that all men bite dogs.
Right.
And this is what happens in the mainstream news. I saw it. We saw it in the most pertinent time was when I was writing the book, was when vaccines were coming out for COVID. And if there was any adverse reaction to a COVID vaccine, the news was right on it.
Right.
Okay. Now, and the people, there's problems. Well, if which I have worked in the healthcare industry and know the protocols, is that if you take a vaccine, any drug for that matter, and have some sort of reaction, that is reported to, in your case, it would be the CDC and and your health authorities. Here it would be Health Canada, and it's investigated. Mm-hmm. And even if if you had a vaccine and you slipped on a piece of ice and fell on the ground, that would still be reported as an incident based on the vaccine. And then there would be a complete report that say, no, the vaccine didn't have anything to do with this. So, but that's a long, involved discussion that doesn't mean black and white. Somebody had a vaccine and had a bad reaction. Mm-hmm. Look what happened with, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan.
Right.
Grew up in say the Toronto area, and cheering for the Buffalo Bills is in my DNA. Well, you remember last year when Damar Hamlin in that football game in Cincinnati, he got hit.
Right.
And his heart
stopped. Yeah.
Twice. Eventually saved. Well, while he's on the field, everybody's got their phone now. Okay. Everybody's got their computer and internet access in their hand. Already starting to tweet, this is because he had a COVID vaccine. It was a myocardial infection in his heart that stopped it. And that was Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted that. And the next day on Tucker Carlson's show, they had a doctor come on and talk all about this. Nothing to do with that. It was what was discovered later, because medical diagnosis takes a little time, folks, that if you get hit, and it happens with soccer players and football players, if you get hit in the helmet or a soccer ball right here in the heart, it can disrupt your heart rhythms to the point of causing it. Just it's the right force at the right time in the right place.
At the right beat, yeah.
At the right in between the beats, all these things can happen. And so that's what actually happened. But meanwhile, 10 million retweets of Marjorie Taylor Greene's "Got to investigate the vaccines. That's what's caused this death." This on field, right during the instant happened. So it's that it's silly putty logic.
Hold on the third one, because I want to expand on what you just said, which is such an important part when you brought the media in. Yes. I want to mention two incidences here in the United States. One that could have had implications, national implications on who win election, etc. The birther movement in America. It didn't matter where Obama was born, given that his mother was an American. But the media ran away with the Trump story on birther, in as much as all they needed to say his mother was a natural born American. It doesn't matter where he was born; he would be a natural born American. That would have been the end of the case. Instead, it moved on. The other thing is when it comes to Canada and Medicare, the state of Medicare in Canada. Canada has, compared to the United States, great healthcare. Compared to the United States, their biggest issue has always been, in Canada, you wait longer for a hip replacement. Turns out here in the United States, we have private healthcare, but given that it's all privatized and you have to move things around, you still have to wait a hell of a long time for most Americans to see a specialist. No different than than let's say, actually quite a bit worse, because it costs you a lot more here in the United States. Just needed to do that interjection. Continue, please.
Well, and and Canada's taxes rates are higher.
They're comparable.
We're comparable. When you actually get down to how much money we end up in the end of the day, you have lower income tax rates in the United States. Some states have no income tax at all, et cetera. But guess what? They have higher sales taxes.
Right.
And you're paying for it in other ways. And America has some of the highest costs of healthcare per capita in the world.
Yes.
With the worst outcomes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Is our healthcare system perfect? Again, nothing's perfect unless we go back to this binary thinking. It's right or it's wrong. It's broken or it's fixed. No, the world moves forward in the gray. And how do we fix it? How do we make it better? And that's what happens with lies and misinformation. Also, they close down thought. We won't go that way because that's bad. I'll hear it listening on CNN, and people talk about Norway. And the right-wing commentators says, well, they're socialists. We don't want to learn anything from them. Happiest people in the world every year.
And great healthcare. I mean, there's an American that I interviewed who moved over there. And he moved over there. His son went skiing and broke his neck. He's better. He's much improved. But it was because of the healthcare they had. He never had to worry about losing a job, never had to worry about going bankrupt. They took care of him. They took him we can do it. If we could get out of these theater of lies, if we can get out of the theater of lies, we would do well. Look, I
remember when the Obamacare was coming in, I have to say this, and they were talking about it and having discussions. And I'm saying Americans are protesting against going bankrupt for healthcare.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
And the fundamental thought that, in order you get healthcare paid for if you have a job. Right.
It's crazy.
Well, so that's linked to a job. Well, why? Why do I have to have a job to get healthcare?
Listen. Let me just say this. I mean, it is great to have somebody from outside of the country who's under these different programs be able to say this. But, I've been having so much fun talking to you that we've actually let time go by. So here's what I'm going to ask you, Ted. First of all, I'm going to ask you to tell me whatever you want that I should have asked you that I didn't, about your book, about anything, so that we can close out. But more importantly, tell me what you see as a solution to try to get around this theater of lies, if you will.
Okay. Well, using the theater of lies metaphor, the lie producers are not going to stop. It works. It has worked for hundreds of years, and it's only getting more so. So the solution is to become a better audience. Okay, a more critical audience. The fundamental way to take care of this is to pause take a step back and be curious. Okay. Ask the question, why are they telling me this? What are their motivations? Okay. It's what I see in the United States that I wrote about in Newsweek about that, there is a conservative movement in the States, in the United States, and national conservatives or common good conservatives or Christian conservatives that are embracing Donald Trump's lies, not because they believe him, but because he will set the ground for them to have their conservative country or independent states, whatever it ends up being, putting democracy back on the table. That people, you've got to spend time to understand not just that people are lying to you, but understand the why of the lies, because they're done with purpose. And once you get into their motivations, you can sort of check that emotional resonance pack for just a bit. What I ask people to do, I said it's very easy and yet very hard. Number one is park your biases, park your ideologies. Just take them and just park them, put them to the side. Say, don't worry, they're safe. They're still there. They're not running away. You can have them back whenever you want. But just for a second, park them. Okay. Ask yourself the question, what if the other side is right? What do I have to know that maybe the other side of this argument has that I don't know? Okay. Just park that for a second, take that pause and be curious. Because between your curiosity and your imagination and that kind of diligence, you become a better audience member. And then you have what I call the third C. First of all, you got to care that you're being lied to. Secondly, you got to be curious. And finally, you have to have the courage to stand up and say, I don't think it's that way, because you're going to get hit hard back. But courage is important. So that's in a couple sentences, what the book is about is to help people, give you the tools both as individuals, organizations, because there's companies and organizations that are spreading lies and misinformation. They don't even know it because they believe the lies they're telling. Yeah. I'll go back. I don't know how much time I got left, but the chocolate industry. Every chocolate bar you buy now, at a mainstream chocolate, says like cocoa for good or sustainable cocoa, all these programs. Well, guess what? The people who are growing the cocoa make $3 a day. Mm-hmm. They can't afford to buy rice from what they sell the cocoa for to feed their families. So, I'm sorry, Nestle and Roundtree and Mars, it's not sustainable. Okay. That's not, you're fooling yourself or you're fooling them. Now they've got a thing called fair trade cocoa, which is higher price, et cetera. We go, well, that's 1% of the market. But so that's an area where I go, that's a problem. They need to tell people that our sustainable cocoa programs aren't working. We need you to help us, consumer, and let's work together to make sure the folks in Guinea who are growing our cocoa can have a good life and educate their children. The point of the matter is you've got to park your biases. Corporations have to look to themselves and say, what misinformation are we putting out there? Let's look at ourselves. And as a society, we have to raise a generation of curious children who are encouraged to have lifelong learning. So our school system is set up to create workers, not create thinkers. Mm-hmm. But here's the problem. I go back just to people who say, well, no, we have to create these workers. When the child going into kindergarten today comes out of high school or a four-year college, none of us know what the labor environment's going to be and the workforce needs are going to be 13, 15, 16 years from now. None of us know. Let's just go back 16 years. Between the internet and social media and digital media and computer technology, we weren't training our kids then to do that. You need to train thinkers who are able to adapt into these new environments. So that's important. If you're trying to raise workers, you can't do it the way you're doing it. You got to raise thinkers. And thinkers, okay, let's go back to that tree of knowledge.
Right.
That's what the authority doesn't want. Exactly. Donald Trump doesn't want people to think.
Exactly.
And doesn't want to have Ron DeSantis, no debates on critical race theory. Dumb title. dumb title. Whoever came up with critical race theory, it was obviously an academic, and then other people took it on and used it. Come up with a better name. It's like when the left took on the term woke. Good black term about being, black slang about being a black children, being aware that when you're around police,
right,
be aware that they're going to treat you differently. But, the left took it and made it their own. And then, of course, it was easy because since nobody knew what woke really means,
we could stamp the meaning. Yeah.
We could stamp the meaning and say, I'm anti-woke. Now it's woke, anti-woke, and nobody knows what any of it means. Okay. Yeah. We get back into labels rather than reality. So that's what education could do, curiosity can do. And I think the last thing is that if somebody ever gives you a term, a word that you don't understand, that you have to look up. First of all, that's good. You're looking it up. You're curious. Yeah. Like somebody talked about illiberalism and, the term common sense, conservatism. I have to look these things up because I don't talk with my friends and my associates and my colleagues and my clients. Yeah. These terms. If I've got to go look it up, somebody's trying to get something by me. Okay. Sure. And the use of language is a very powerful tool to manipulate people. Well, that's my business. Though I believe I'm trying to persuade people for good and for them to be independent thinkers, not ideological on either side. Ideology is a killer of curiosity. And that's why I promote this message to all sides of the argument.
Ted Griffith, author of Theater of Lies. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Appreciate it. I look forward to hearing the broadcast.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.
Letitia James did not pull any punches. She is the attorney who prosecuted, the state attorney for New York, who prosecuted Donald Trump for his thievery, for his thuggishness in the financial sector in New York. And she made it clear, whether you're president of the United States or otherwise, you will pay for your malfeasance. And yes, he's going to pay for his malfeasance to the order of over $500 million for having ripped off New York and bankers for so many years. Listen to what she had to say, then we'll take it on the other side.
I want to be clear. White-collar financial fraud is not a victimless crime. When the powerful break the law and take more than their fair share, there are fewer resources available for working people, small businesses, and families. And everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank about how much money they have in order to get a mortgage to buy a home, or a loan to keep their business afloat, or to send their child to college. And if they did, I want to thank the entire incredible and hardworking team in my office that tried this case. Because the scale and the scope of Donald Trump's fraud is staggering. And so too is his ego and his belief that the rules do not apply to him. Today, we are holding Donald Trump accountable. We are holding him accountable for lying, cheating, and a lack of contrition, and for flouting the rules that all of us must play by. Because there cannot be different rules for different people in this country, and former presidents are no exception. This decision is a massive victory for every American who believes in that simple but fundamental pillar of our democracy, that the rule of law applies to all of us, equally, fairly, and justly. Thank you.
So yeah, it's coming home to roost now. The chickens are coming home to roost. Donald Trump probably thought he would have forever get away with his malfeasance. Well, now in the latter stages of his life, the old man will pay. The thing about it is, what will be the behavior of his sycophants? We don't know, but it doesn't matter. His life, for all practical purposes, as a supposed tycoon, we know it's just a tycoon on paper only, never amounted to much. Well, for all practical purposes, no matter what he tries, it's over.
Mustafaa Carroll, former head of CAIR, but I know he got reabsorbed into it again. So first of all, tell us a little bit about you, Mustafaa.
Okay, a little bit about me. Born and raised in Gary, Indiana. Come from a family of 4 boys. My father was a steel worker. My mother was a nurse. Left Gary after high school, attended Indiana University where I did my undergraduate work in biology and psychology. Met my wife there. Got married in Indiana over 40 years ago. Had 2 kids in Indiana. Then we moved to Texas, where I was working in healthcare. I was at Gulf Coast Regional Blood Center. I was a director of apheresis on mobiles. Got recruited to work in Dallas. Worked in Dallas for like 17 years, and then got recruited to come back to Houston. And that's when you probably saw me.
That's when I met you. And ironically, we always talk about 6 degrees of separation. It turns out that the woman that you're married to is from the same country of my origin, Panama. It's amazing. Sabroso. There you go. But
I love it too.
I know, and you love all the good food. Lucky you.
And best food.
Yes, but here, look, you are the former head of CAIR in Houston.
Yeah,
what is CAIR?
CAIR is the largest Muslim civil rights organization in the country. We protect civil rights for Muslims. We're advocates. We not only engage with Muslims, but we actually, this event here reminds me that we did a lot of immigration work, a lot of social justice, a lot of criminal justice reform. We've been involved in almost every aspect of social justice you can think about. But we're primarily, our goal is to serve as a civil rights advocate for Muslims. And we help them, and we want people to understand the Muslim community. So we help to bridge understanding between communities and with communities.
Now, you moved to Dallas a few years ago,
right?
And you claimed that you were going to be a retired person.
Yeah.
Turns out it's not quite that way. What has happened?
I moved to Dallas, and people said, "Well, are you going to work with CAIR?" And I said, "No, I'm retired." The very next day, they asked me to be a consultant, which was lightweight. It wasn't too big. And so I did that for maybe a year. And this recently, in November 1st, I got commandeered to help them. The former executive director there left, and they asked me to help them reboot CAIR DFW. So I'm back with CAIR. It's like being in the mafia.
Well, I tell you, they keep dragging me in. Yeah, Al Pacino, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
But anyway, the reason I wanted to talk to you is what's occurring right now in the Middle East, specifically Israel and Gaza. And before we get into it, I want to make a subject to the people that are listening. Being anti what's going on has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, and you should not allow anybody to shut you up when you're attempting to just talk humanity.
Yes.
Let's remember that. Anyway, I want to hear what your thoughts are on what's occurring in Israel right now.
Absolutely. Well, most of the people here, the way it's been framed forever, and it didn't just start October 7th, but the frame is that Israel has the right to defend itself. That's not arguable. Anybody can say that. But unless you understand the history of what's happened in Palestine for the last 75 years, it's been to oust the Palestinians from their homes. You have a lot of human rights abuses that have been going on way before October 7th. And then October 7th and Hamas attacked Israel, and Israel's response has been well over the top. I mean, it's not even an appropriate response, and people don't know that it is an occupier, one of the worst occupations that we've seen in modern history. That there are over 300 and something checkpoints, that you have children being put in prisons, and now we're seeing what appears to be the genocide in our own time.
Actually, by definition, I mean, it's not arguable. I mean, some people would like to make it an arguable position. It's not an arguable position.
Yeah, it is
by definition, that is what we're having. By definition, Gaza and the West Bank are apartheid territories.
Absolutely. You don't. And people ask me, they say, well, because there's similarities between the civil rights period,
right,
the Jim Crow South and that. But when I examine it, it's even worse than what happened in if you want to say that, because in Jim Crow South, we could drive where we wanted to drive.
Right.
We didn't have places that I couldn't drive, not by law. We didn't have 1,000-mile, 26-foot-high wall that was is the largest open-air prison. We didn't have our children people were getting shot and killed, but now we see it wholesale. We didn't see them putting the level. It's the level of things that we're seeing now in Gaza is just...
Well, our laws had the semblance of equality. The laws did, if it weren't for the people, but the laws had a semblance. It wasn't real.
Not great, but it had a semblance.
It's a semblance of it.
No,
now, there's not even a semblance.
There's no equality. They can't vote. They're second-class or third-class citizens at best. And I don't know why people are confused when they understand what's going on.
Well, I mean, and that's where CAIR and a lot of other organizations should come in my humble opinion, in that most people are good people. Most Americans are good people. The problem is most people are also ignorant.
Absolutely.
They don't understand the genesis of places. They don't understand the genesis of conflicts.
Absolutely.
What should we do? Because like I said, one of the things that I tell people now more, and it's necessary, is do not allow anybody, any identity to co-opt a word.
Yes.
What happened in Germany was a genocide. It was a Holocaust. It was horrendous.
Absolutely.
And there's no doubt that, but what the current Israeli government and previous Israeli governments are doing in Gaza and the West Bank and in Israel proper
is outrageous. And what is worse about it, one of the things that really hits home for me and has for a long time is like we're giving $3.8 billion a year to a country that doesn't need that support. We're giving them all the state-of-the-art weapons. So most of the common folks, when they hear that the way that it's been framed, they think that this is a war of equals. So
right.
It's not even a war. It's a rout.
Right.
It's not a war. You got one group got homemade rockets and
made of pipes
and stuff like that, and the other group has everything that we have.
2,000-pound bombs.
2,000-pound bomb. More bombs being dropped in Gaza now than what was dropped any other place for over a period of years. We're dropping on a place the size of New Jersey.
We have to start trying to have folks recognize what humanity is all about again. Because I think what happened is when you dehumanize a group, when you oppress that group or apply violence to that group, nobody sees it for what it really is. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we have to learn.
And one of the things about oppressed peoples is that other folks, I don't know why, but they tend to wonder, can't believe the response. I mean, I remember during the civil rights moment, there was just there was a time. They should have known that there was going to be a time that their people were going to resort to violence. I don't know why that's surprising.
Well, that's the reason Martin Luther King was successful to some extent, right?
Yeah.
The fear that eventually the sleeping dog's going to wake up.
Yep, and the sleeping dogs woke up.
Because let's look at our founding fathers, right?
Yeah.
Aren't the founding fathers were sleeping dogs that woke up and effectively affected. Well, in today's world, would the founding fathers be called terrorists?
Yep, they would be called terrorists, and they were called all kinds of things back then. But they would definitely be called terrorists. They would be called insurrectionists because they went against
the current government, right?
And you remember they had famous sayings like "Give me liberty" or "Give me
or
death."
"Give me death." Yeah.
And the Boston Tea Party,
right,
was to protest no taxation without representation. All those things now, historically, people look at and say, "Oh my God, that was so heroic." But it wasn't heroic to the British.
Right.
It was an insurrection to the British. It was going against the government. You know, those things that we look at now in a different way.
So let me ask you, what should we, Mustafaa, be doing? First of all, to educate the people in America to the truth, not the narrative, to the truth. And why this is also a danger for us. You know, we look at it as, well, we are bigger, we are more powerful, but this is actually a danger to every single American citizen, what we are allowing to occur in Gaza and the West Bank.
I was on a program back in the end of November called Beyond Gaza, meaning what are we going to do next? What's going to happen after this? And for our country, look, we are no longer, we have no longer, and I told them, they asked me, what about our moral compass? I said, we don't have a moral compass. We don't have a moral compass. We're losing our standing in the world. People are seeing this, and this is emboldening other groups to do what we're doing. We're leaders in the world. So when they see that the most powerful country in the world has no moral compass, then what does that say to the rest of the world? That means that whatever they do, the thing that we were upset about the Russians invading Ukraine, at the very same time that we said that, this thing with Gaza has been going on for centuries, for decades. Been going on for decades with our blessing that we are complicit in the murder of over almost close to 30,000 folks. Wantonly, we are complicit. We can no longer say that we are the moral leader of the world. We're not. We haven't been for a good while. And so what we have to do as a community, and this is a long distance race, this is not a sprint. What we have to do is consistently educate people as to what is really happening, despite the fact that you're going to be called anti-Semitic, that you're going to be called enemies of the state of Israel, and all this other garbage that we hear. That we're not enemies. I speak the truth.
Now, let me just tell you that all this info that we talk about, when we talk these issues, I make sure that this is sanctioned by my Jewish friends.
Right.
I have a lot of Jewish friends that I pass a lot of my wordiology by to ensure that we are in fact saying things correctly. And the vast majority of my Jewish friends have told me, Egberto, what you're doing by trying to spread the truth to the American population, there's nothing anti-Semitic about it. We cannot allow others to make one believe that speaking up against a right-wing evil Israeli government is somehow anti-Semitic. It is not.
Absolutely. And the narrative now is that they've conflated it.
Right.
They've conflated anti-Semitism to be anybody who speaks against the state of Israel.
Right.
And Jewish Voice of Peace was outlawed, and several other Jewish organizations internally, their own people.
Right.
And let me say this: there are lots and lots of Jewish folks who disagree with what's going on.
It's actually a plurality.
A large majority. I don't know if it's a majority, but it's a large group
right.
of Jewish folks who disagree with what's going on humanitarian basis.
It is amazing. There are many coming out and said, "Oh my God, we were indoctrinated."
Yes,
that's what they've said. They've said that their leaders have indoctrinated them. Absolutely. And no more. They're the biggest risk to the Jewish people is the current Jewish Israeli government.
And it's been going on. The sad thing is, if there's a silver lining behind all this, it's that now the whole world is seeing it. The downside to the silver lining is, look at the price that's being paid.
28,000 and counting.
And counting. Now, look at what's happening at home. We have around 3,600 cases, civil rights cases in the last 3 months. We have that many cases because this stuff is getting back home. So people on their jobs are being discriminated against if they say ceasefire, if they say free Palestine, and God forbid that they should say from the river to the sea. I didn't know that had any meaning except free the people in Palestine.
But it's deeper than that, because it turns out that the Likud party, that's in their platform. From the river to the sea. In other words, if they believe that phrase really means extermination,
yes,
that means that's what they stand for.
That's what they think it means for them. When you say Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, in their opinion, that means you want to see the state of Israel.
Well, I think people should be educated to understand that from the river to the sea, actually, for most Palestinians, actually mean we don't want to be removed from our lands, no matter where it is, and we don't want others, meaning the Israelis who've been in that land, or I should say the Hebrews who've been in that land. That's fine as well.
But now the injustice of all of this, they can't return. The Palestinians can't return, and this is not just Muslims. This is some of the earlier opponents of the state of Israel were Palestinian Christians.
Right.
And those folks cannot return. They're having their homes demolished. Those that aren't demolished, they're confiscating lands, giving it to settlers, people who've never been there before, people coming from New York and Jersey and other places in the world, that they're just, and you got to look at this and understand that there's no intention, in my humble opinion, that the state of Israel wants to see any peace at all. What I see happening is this is the biggest land grab in modern history. And as I was telling people before, there's absolutely nothing that they're doing in the state of Israel that we didn't do here first.
Exactly.
If you look at our pedigree, what happened in this country, we killed we tried to annihilate all the indigenous people. We took the land, we murdered them, we marched them from Alabama to Oklahoma.
The Trail of Tears. Again, when you talk about moral compass, you said we're losing our moral compass. The question is, when did we have a moral compass? We can say we have a moral compass. The moral compass are the individual people in America who have always tried to do good.
That's it.
The plutocracy in this country has never had a moral compass, and the government was always an ear to a frame of the plutocracy.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we got to close out here. So give me a quick closer.
Do you quick? I am begging folks to learn as much as you can on both sides of this issue, especially on the Palestinian side, because it hasn't been talked about in the public square. We've only heard one side of it, and the other side, that side has done a magnificent job of shutting down any information on the Palestinian side. And those folks have suffered for over 75 years, the 50-year 15 year, I think, blockade of Gaza, no medical support. I just saw a documentary showing the challenges that they have to go through medically. Before October 7th, they had no power, no water, all these things are happening, and now it's what I call white supremacy on steroids. It's white supremacy on steroids. Everything that's happening there has happened here, but now it's happening here on steroids there. And we have to pray for everyone.
Mustafaa Carroll, thank you so kindly for your frank conversation.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.